Half the Heat were suspended. No problem. Zombie Heat right again. The Raptors again went over the Pacers. The Knicks won, but there were some hijinks. Plus, we'll answer some big NBA questions like why isn't Jayson Tatum in the MVP conversation? And is there an anti-Lakers bias in NBA officiating? The Lakers think so. All that and more on Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On NBA, your daily source for all things NBA from the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for joining us and making us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us here on a Tuesday. We're here throughout all of the week, Monday through Friday, and we appreciate you being in every day or checking us out daily, whether you're with us, David Ramil and Matt Moore here on Tuesday, Jake Mass and John Krause on Wednesdays, Nick Angstad and Path the Designer on Thursdays, or Wes Goldberg and Adam Mares on Fridays. We appreciate you guys being part of our community. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Like I said, my name is Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, co-host of Locked On Nuggets, joined by co-host of Locked On Heat, David Ramil, who just got done recording that fine program. If you want to go check out more reaction to what we'll lead off tonight, we are going to talk about it later in the show. Jayson Tatum and Draymond Green's comments about the fact that he's not in the MVP conversation and he should be. And we're also going to talk about LeBron and the Lakers feeling like they just there's a grand bias against them. That's an outrage. We'll talk about that. Plus, oh, hey, the Clippers pulled off a rebranding effort and didn't embarrass themselves. So that's a win. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But we'll start tonight with this. Miami Heat are on the road. No Jimmy Butler, he's suspended. No Thomas Bryant, he's suspended from the kerfuffle, the fracas, the brouhaha with the New Orleans Pelicans over the weekend. So instead, starting in this game was Caleb Martin, rookie Jaime Jaquez Jr., Bam Adebayo, Duncan Robinson, who, by the way, just having an absolutely sensational season. I'm going to keep screaming this to the heavens. There's no award that we can give Duncan Robinson, but boy, I wish that there was for how well he's played this year. And DeLon Wright. DeLon just picked up off of the discard pile, off the waiver wire, just like, oh, hey, let's just go ahead and add DeLon Wright. He scores 13 points, and guess what? The Zombie Heat on the road knock off De'Aaron Fox, Domantas Sabonis, Keegan Murray, and the Sacramento Kings. Heat got out to a good start in this one, like I kind of figured that they would. Built a lead, then Kings come back and maybe take a little bit of advantage. And then the Heat stormed right back, and despite getting close at the end, David, look, to me, this is everyone's tired of talking about Heat culture. Everyone's tired of the cliche, but it's stuff like this that proves it. That in the NBA, sure, every night I think letdown effects are real when guys are out. I think the back-to-back rest spot was bad, but not every team takes advantage of it. Not every team comes out ahead when they're missing their guys. Not every team has the institutional knowledge to pull this kind of stuff off. And while they did have their best player in Bam Adebayo, he's clearly been their best player this season. This is still like proof of how good the Miami Heat are, even when they're missing guys. Tyler Hero out with injury, didn't even get to him. Tyler Hero out with injury in this game. Josh Richardson still out with injury in this game.
Rozier, Nikola Jovic suspended as well. So they were missing literally half their roster tonight. And yet, you mentioned they got some minutes here for Alondas Williams and Cole Swider, two-way contracts. But other than that, it was really a 7-man rotation, including Kevin Love at 35 and Haywood Highsmith, another unsigned, undrafted player that they've been able to add there. Incredible performance. I'm glad you pointed it out because I know I've had to defend it before, and a lot of people get tired of hearing it because it is a great, ad campaign, and it's very cliched in what they talk about, and they've leaned into it so heavily. But there is such an accountability throughout that franchise, an understanding of what your role is, and an understanding that you have to stay ready because you never know when you're going to be called upon into service, whether it's a late February game or in the playoffs. You never know. And when you have that opportunity, you've got to make the most of it. And everybody on the floor tonight, all 7 players that actually played tonight for Miami were fantastic in their respective roles. You mentioned DeLon Wright. These first minutes in a Heat uniform, like he had just been acquired during the All-Star break. He hadn't played in New Orleans, which was Miami's first game back after the All-Star break. He starts tonight, plays 30-something minutes, and had a really good performance as a result. Bam was really aggressive. I think he dominated the matchup against Domantas Sabonis. But you got Jaime Jaquez, again, another mid-late first-round pick who's been phenomenal. He had 26 points, some key buckets late in the game. Duncan Robinson redefining himself with 11 assists, a career high. He's been a phenomenal playmaker. He was the Ersatz point guard for Miami because DeLon really wasn't initiating offense, so it was mostly Duncan or Jaime, even Caleb Martin, who was 2 seasons ago. I love to remind us, as he was burning Boston last year in the Eastern Conference playoffs, that guy was basically in China, if not for J. Cole knowing who Caron Butler was and vice versa, and getting a call saying, hey, you know what? You should bring this Caleb Martin guy on. I know his brother Cody in Charlotte. He's pretty good too. So, and he got a tryout for Miami, and here he is contributing 3 years later. It's just, there's just this understanding again that you're going to have an opportunity, and Eric Spoelstra does such a great job of preaching this publicly to media. And we make fun of this all the time on Lockdown Heat. He always talks about the guys in the locker room. They're always ready. You got to respect who they are because they're all great players. But it's like an institutional belief, as you said. And I think that's really well phrased because they do accept this. Like, he talks them up, and it just sounds like hype outside of Miami and outside of that locker room, but they believe it. And I think they really lean into it. And you see it in performances like tonight. You've seen it in the playoffs over the last 4 seasons.
Bam, absolutely sensational in this game. 28 points, 10 boards, 7 assists, 2 steals, 1 block. Good grief. 11 of 18 from the field for Bam Adebayo, who's having an all-NBA caliber season for the Miami Heat. Did get 26 from Jaime Jaquez Jr., the steal of the NBA draft this year. Keegan Murray goes for 28 points. He's so good. Kevin Huerter and De'Aaron Fox, they combined to shoot 18 of 39 from the field. Again, back-to-back, Heat are tough. I get it. And look, the Kings did shoot 53% overall, in part because Keegan went for 10 and 14 from the field. Notable in this game to me, though, was that this is a serious opponent. Like, the Heat are a serious opponent, even when they're shorthanded. They're a serious opponent. Yeah. Domantas Sabonis goes minus 15. Now, look, Domantas has had a great season. He's racked up so many triple-doubles and he leads the league in triple-doubles this year. He's surpassed Nikola Jokic in those categories. He's been sensational. Had another one tonight. 14 points, 14 boards, 10 assists. I am very concerned about the Kings' ability to win playoff games because in these big game situations, I notice a lot of spots where Sabonis winds up in the negative. Now, last night he was absolutely sensational versus the Clippers, so that kind of balances it out. Like, that's what I think is so funny about the NBA. It's like, you probably should have lost that game versus the Clippers if we're looking at it from like a who's better standpoint. That was a massive win for them last night. And then it gets evened out because a game that they should have won at home versus a shorthanded Heat team, they lose. That's just kind of like how the NBA kind of works, but it's also indicative of where the Kings are this season, which is they're not it's not 1 step forward, 2 steps back for the Kings. It's exactly like 1.25 steps forward, 1 step back. That's how they are this season. Hit on a couple of the other games. There was this Knicks game versus the Pistons. Pistons had a lead. It was 111-110. They were going to finally get a win. And then this sequence breaks out, which is just absolutely crazy. Oscar Thompson gets a loose ball and is going up the floor off a steal. And Dante DiVincenzo, like, straight up Super Bowl tackles him. Yeah. And they don't call anything. They call it incidental. The ball goes free. The Knicks wind up with it, pass underneath the heart for an and one for the winning bucket with 2 seconds left. This was I have zero idea of what the 2-minute report is going to say tomorrow, but this was a wild sequence for a game in which the Pistons, who only have 8 wins this season, have played so hard for it. I really feel like they got screwed in this one.
I agree 100%. Even before that, I know the referee explained it as Simone Fontecchio, I guess. He had a rebound off of Josh Hart miss, and he had the ball in his hands. And then he was hacked across the hand. But again, it was that rule that is sometimes enforced and sometimes not, where the hand was on the ball and it was legal to make contact. So, part of the ball. So, again, that was a little peculiar, but that's when the ball kind of came loose there. And All-Star Thompson, as you pointed out, corralled the ball, and then DiVincenzo from out of nowhere just tackles him in the legs. That was a very strange no call, and the replay has not done the referees any service there because they're just staring at the play and they're going, no, that seems perfectly legal. And what was an open field tackle anywhere else in the NBA? So I'm just not exactly sure. And then the poll report later on, they admit as much, and we're like, yeah, we kind of blew it, but that doesn't do the Pistons any favors either. So Monty Williams after the game showing a little bit of a spark and saying, you know what, the referees absolutely screwed us. He only spoke for a couple of minutes, didn't take any questions, and stormed off. Obviously, pretty heated, and with good reason. I think the Knicks got very, very, very lucky that refereeing crew gave them the game.
Just my Williams called it an abomination. That's an all-timer right there. Elsewhere in the association, on a pretty quiet night, Pacers defense once again doesn't show up. Now they've been better overall this season over the last 3 or 4 months, but they have these games where they go way, way far back, and this is one where they really struggled versus the Toronto Raptors. Raptors get the win when they needed, really, 131-22. They got 24 points from RJ Barrett, 21, 12, and 12 from Scotty Barnes on a triple-double. Just couldn't do anything. The Pacers kept hanging in and had chance and could never quite get over the hump, despite 34 points from Benedict Mathurin and 27 from Pascal Siakam. Quiet night for Tyrese Haliburton, 2 of 11 from the field for just 9 points. Disappointing loss for the Pacers. Up next, Draymond Green said something on his podcast and asked a question about why isn't Jayson Tatum in the MVP conversation, given the Celtics' success. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk about the rest of the MVP field when we return here on Locked On NBA. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes. Its class exclusive Google is built in, and it's always your updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is a perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. Longtime Rogue owner, love those cars. My favorite car I've ever owned. How about the 2024 Nissan Pathfinder? It's got room for up to 8 and expansive cargo capacity, perfect for tailgating, and advanced available 4x4 capability. With a 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing, when adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. Summer's around the corner. If you want to go on those summer adventures, Pathfinder's a great one. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Make us part of your day. Appreciate you guys being with us. Matt Moore alongside David Ramil. David? So on Draymond Green's podcast today, he talks about Jayson Tatum. Great podcast, by the way, from Draymond, talking about last night's Nuggets game and a lot of NBA fights. It was just a really good podcast. As long as he's not talking about Miles Bridges, I like what Draymond has to say. One thing that he did kind of note, though, was he was talking about Jayson Tatum, and he was like, Jayson Tatum's like not seriously in the MVP conversation. He listed off the odds at his sponsor. And as a matter of fact, Jayson Tatum is way far down the charts, despite the fact that the Boston Celtics are going to finish with the best record in the league. They're 45-12. They're going to finish with probably somewhere close to 65 wins or more. I looked this up today. There's a stat called Simple Rating System, SRS. And what it does is it's point differential versus strength of schedule. So it's how much did you win by versus how tough was your opponent's schedule. And you go like, well, everyone plays the same teams in the NBA. Not true. You play some teams in your conference 4 times. You play some of them 3 times. And some divisions are tougher, and you play those 4, and the other one's 3. So while you do play the other conference twice, and everybody does that, you can have some small differentials. The Celtics are on pace for the 8th best SRS of all time.
Yeah.
Of the top 10, 5 of them won the NBA title. Now, notably, most of those came in the top 4. So that's something to keep in mind there. But they are projected to have one of the better regular season performances of all time. And as Tatum is their best player, Draymond Green understandably asked this question because I do think players always start with, did you win? And like, that's a credit to them, given that doesn't always seem like winning in the regular season is as important to them as maybe it was, decades ago. And so it's interesting that winning is kind of the place where they start. So I want to just ask you, like, right off the top here, 1, do you think Jayson Tatum is in the MVP conversation? And if he's not, why not?
I don't think he is in the MVP conversation. And to me, and I've always had a problem with the criteria. We've talked about this before. It's so hard to parse through great individual performances and team performances. And, every MVP candidate over the last, whatever, since the award has been a part of the NBA, has been part of a winning team. But you just look at how Celtics fans and Celtics media talk about that team. Like, you cannot have this great historic starting lineup with Derek White being a realistic all-star candidate, and Jaylen Brown being another all-star candidate, and Drew Holiday still being a great player even at his age, and Kristaps Porzingis changing everything. You can't have it both ways. You can't have a great team that is clearly beating the hell out of the rest of the NBA and then say, you know what? The best player on the best team should be the MVP as well. His numbers don't reflect it, and he is not so singularly impactful as some of the past MVPs around the league. And that's my stance on it. Like, to me, the best player in the NBA is still the guy who absolutely turns things around and dominates, and that's Nikola Jovic. And maybe you can make a case for Joel Embiid before he was hurt, even though I'm not a particular fan of his overall game. But when it comes to Tatum, I don't. You could argue that he might not even be the best player on this team, and he certainly has benefited from the greatness, the goodness of the other players on that roster. And I just think that Celtics fans have been so loud this year because of their overall record. And it's just unfair, I think, to say, you know what, we're winning a lot of games. We should have the kind of hardware, the awards that go with it. It doesn't work out that way. It never has. There have been other good teams, in the past, and you can't just have an MVP picked out of the best team in the league. And I don't think Tatum's numbers show that he is the best single player in the NBA. He's a very good player. He's not the MVP.
I do like that you Freudian slipped there and called him Nikola Jovic, just because.
Did I? Oh, I'm sorry. It's Jokic. He's the best player in the NBA.
Vaunted component of the would-be Damian Lillard trade,
so
who has a huge number of DNP CDs this year. So here's one of the things that's kind of interesting. Like, I keep my streak alive of digging into you with a hot poker about that. So I think a lot of this for me, I do a lot of work on the MVP. I've done it throughout the majority of my career, and it's tough because I was asked this weekend about usage with like Luka Doncic, because he leads the league in usage. With Embiid currently out, he leads the candidates in usage by a pretty wide margin. And what I said was, you can have high usage, but you're going to have to back that up with high efficiency. Like, the bar is high. The more responsibility that you take on, the more that you are responsible for making sure that it's efficient, productive, and that the team results are in line with that as well. But if you do those things, that does boost you. And this is kind of where it gets to with Tatum, because going into yesterday, Tatum had the second best on-court net rating in the league. That's a team stat. This is like, I got to start with this right here. Otherwise, Seth Partnow over The Athletic is going to reach through the internet and choke me. It's a team stat. Okay. Yep. That's how the team plays. But for me, it's a really meaningful one, because my question always starts with, when you were on the court, how much did you win by? I care about winning. And like, this is why I think the derision of point differential and net rating and all these things is ridiculous. Because I'm like, it's literally, how much did you win by? That's literally what it is. When you were on the court, how much did your team win by? And Jayson Tatum was second. Guess who's now number 2? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's actually passed him last night by a few percentage marks. But the problem is that number 1 is Derek White. So it's impossible to tell apart Jayson Tatum's impact from Derek White's. Now, what's interesting also is, guess who's got a better one on the Denver Nuggets? Contavious Caldwell-Pope, because he doesn't play in those staggered lineups. So you do have to be able to parse through all of these numbers and provide context. But even if we get past the advanced nerdistry, here's the reality. Tatum has not had that great of a season. He's had a really great one.
Yep.
He's had a marvelous season in terms of the team performance. But if you look at his numbers, he's averaging 26.9, and he hasn't had to score more because the Celtics are awesome. But also, he hasn't scored. The other candidates are either scoring above 30, or in Nikola Jokic's case, are averaging 26 points, 12 boards, and 9 assists per game. In Luka Doncic's case, he's doing all of it. He's scoring 34 points per game with 9 rebounds and 9 assists. And we're back in the stats thing. I'm not saying that Jayson Tatum isn't helpful towards winning. I don't know how you can argue that. He's the best player on the best team. He is definitely worthy, in my opinion, he's definitely worthy of being in the MVP conversation. And what I mean by that, because a lot of people will say, like, well, he's got to be in the conversation. No. There are some people that aren't going to be in the conversation. I'll be really honest with you. Kawhi Leonard can't be in the conversation. Can't be. He's not the primary engine of the team. The Clippers haven't won relative to the other teams. And his usage isn't high. Like, he just doesn't do enough. Tatum, I think, belongs in the conversation. And what I mean by that is, are you going to finish top 5? Okay. The list of guys is Jokic, Shea, Luka, Giannis, and then we got an open spot. And I think it's fine to put Jayson Tatum in there. I think Donovan Mitchell actually has a larger responsibility for a team with a lot less talent.
Yes. But
I'm also not a fan of, I'm not going to reward Donovan Mitchell because Darius Garland and Jared Allen got hurt, because that's not fair to Tatum. Kristaps Porzingis has missed a bunch of time. Guess what? They've still rolled through teams. Tatum has been a really great player. He hasn't been unbelievable, incredible, and he hasn't taken on the responsibility of these other guys. And to me, that is the big differential for why Jayson Tatum can't be in the top 3 and can't be the MVP. I'm fine with saying, like, yes, he deserves mention. You can put him on your ballot, and that's fine. There are some guys that don't belong there. I think Jayson Tatum is fine to put him on your ballot, but I don't think you can put him ahead of any of the other 4 guys that I mentioned.
Would you say he's 5th? I mean, you kind of went through it right now. Would you say he's the 5th on your MVP ballot, the fictional MVP ballot?
I'd have a hard time putting him above Donovan Mitchell because he actually has been that good. I actually really would have a hard time. And actually, like, Jalen Brunson's numbers compare favorably to him. If I got all the way there on the list, I'd probably give Tatum the edge because, yeah, I do care about the winning. The winning matters. But we also did this a couple of years ago when the Suns won like 63 games, and we were like, don't they have, what if it's Chris Paul? And it's like, no, it's not. It's not Chris Paul. So it's fine to wonder this, but it's not a huge bias against Tatum. If Tatum was averaging 30, guess what? He'd be way higher in the MVP conversation. If he was averaging 29 and 7, we'd be a lot higher in the conversation, but he's not.
He's not.
So that's the reality of it. And that sets them up. I'll tell you this also, guys with that kind of usage, typically they don't win the NBA finals. So Tatum's maybe in a better position to win an NBA title, which I think is much more important for his legacy going forward.
Well, Draymond mentioned that too. Do you think that that's a criteria? Do you think that will change for next year? Like, does he have to win a championship this season to be considered an MVP type player next year? Because I think the argument would still hold next season as well, is that he doesn't have to necessarily be singularly as impactful as some of these other players in order to continue winning at such a high level.
It's a chicken and the egg thing, because I think there's a presumption that in order for them to win the title, he has to find a level he's never played at, which I think he's gotten closer and closer to that level. I actually think he was really close last year. I thought he was phenomenal last year. He had such great control of the game. This year, I think he's been when I say really good, it makes it sound like I'm talking about like Kobe White, right? No, Jayson Tatum's been elite this year. He's been really good among elite players. He just hasn't been in that top 1 percentile. And that's where you got to get to for MVP. The MVP is not fair. It's tough. The bar is high. Yeah. These are the best players in the world. Up next. Well, some things might not be fair, and the Lakers want to let you know about it. They've got some complaints with the officiating we're going to talk about. Plus, the Clippers have got a brand new bag. We'll talk about that up next on Locked On NBA. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. You know, therapy is really important for working through all the issues that can pop up in your life. It's really important that you deal with those things. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might be thinking the same thing this week. Draymond Green is going to be the face of the NBA going forward for a long time. And he's going to be on inside the NBA, and he's going to do a great job. I think Draymond Green is always simultaneously the best and the worst. He is all things. That's what's going to make him a fascinating media character. It's what's made him a compelling player. But this week, when he talked about how Miles Bridges could, quote, do no wrong, given Miles Bridges' history of domestic violence, regardless of the current status of that relationship in his life, it was really disturbing. And it was an unfortunate reality that too often the players are willing to forgive almost anything with their fellow players involving any sort of violence towards women in their lives. And that's really unfortunate. No one has ever called this out, and it continues to be extremely upsetting for me as someone who has friends that are women, colleagues that are women, people in my life that are women. For the love of God, the bar is not high here, Draymond. We got to do better. And I wish that somebody in the NBA would really have the balls to speak out about this, because it's pretty upsetting. But that's my issue, and I can talk about that in therapy. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back on Locked On NBA. Back here on Locked On NBA. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. So, David, this came out yesterday from Dave McMenamin over at the Worldwide Leader. It starts with the story from Phoenix after the Lakers lost pretty much wire to wire to the Suns. All LeBron James could do was laugh Sunday when asked about the free throw disparity in the Los Angeles Lakers 123-113 loss to the Suns. Phoenix shot 19 free throws as compared to just 8 for LA, representing a season low for the Lakers and tying the fewest such attempts in any game for the team since James joined the franchise in 2018. It goes on to talk about how the Lakers basically are not getting the calls that they deserve. Anthony Davis said, we lived on getting to the line. We attacked the basket, especially how we struggle from three. We're kind of up and down. So we try to live in the paint and get to the line. I'm not sure if it was just the refs missing it or they weren't fouling. I felt like I fouled a couple of times, but that's part of our identity. Our DNA is getting the line and guys catching rhythms. James said a lot of people, a lot of coaches, a lot of teams are like, that's all the Lakers do is get to the free throw line. It's like this narrative out there that that's all we do is get to the free throw line. I mean, we have attackers. That's what we do. We have attackers. Yeah, we shoot the ball from the perimeter, but we're not shooting 40 to 50 threes a game. We're not that team. We don't have the luxury of being that team. So working it into the paint, that's what we're really good at. And Darvin Ham obviously called out the officials as well. We all remember the Celtics game last year where there was a missed call and the officials tweeted out sleepless nights, etc. Andy Bailey tweeted out the stats on how much far ahead the Lakers are. I get the idea, David, that they attack and they drive inside and they're constantly putting pressure and they're a big physical team. And so that they should draw more free throws. But the disparity is so wide between them and number two that I have a really hard time here. Like you want to draw fouls. I get that. You're not always going to, because that's a choice that the defender makes. And certain games are officiated certain ways. And you relying on officiating is probably indicative that maybe your team isn't as good as you need it to be, rather than some problem with the officiating.
I think that's all very fair. I think LeBron is leveraging just as he has for most of his career, right? I mean, certainly even before he joined Miami in 2010, like putting these things out there changes the way those games are officiated. Like the Lakers have an advantage, whether they rely on it or not. And I think it's a good point. They shouldn't rely on it. It's probably indicative of the fact that, you know, there are some deficiencies on the roster, but they can't, you know, go into each game expecting to get these calls, and then when they don't necessarily get them, because again, games are, as you said, officiated differently, you can't just whine and kvetch about it. But you know, this is him manipulating the system as much as he has, and it's worked. So I understand it. I don't like it, especially when the numbers reflect just how much of an advantage they already have in that area. It just seems like pouting and whining needlessly when you say we're not getting those calls, and then somebody shows you the numbers. It's like, oh yeah, we're getting those calls, but we didn't get them when we wanted them. It's like, okay, well, that's too bad. You know, I just, there are bigger issues with that team. They're not that good. They have roster problems, and I think they're going to get the calls when it matters for them. And they might still not be good enough to beat a team in the playoffs anyway. They might not even make the playoffs. Like, I know you tweeted this out earlier, but they're in a really tough spot in the Western Conference right now, fighting for a play-in spot. And I don't know that it's necessarily a guarantee. And you expect a team with Anthony Davis and LeBron James, two of the best players in NBA history, that they might be able to figure it out and put it all together, but they just haven't. And so this over-reliance on the free throws, not a great look for that team.
The first time a team thinks it's officiated fairly will be the absolute first, and that's in every single sport across the planet. I would love it if just like one time a team was like, oh, we get a great whistle. No, yeah, like I get like almost every call I deserve. It would just be really refreshing.
And even some I don't.
Like, it would just be really refreshing to hear that. Just someone be like, oh, no, yeah, like absolutely 100%. Just to have like Luka Doncic, like after a game where he shoots like a million free throws, just be like, no, yeah, I grifted tonight and they bought it. So, yeah, I just think it's tough. And like, look, I am sympathetic to the idea that they're big and physical. Also, you employ D'Angelo Russell and Austin Reeves. Like Austin Reeves gets one of the softest whistles in the league, and Austin Reeves is not a tough, physical, big driver. So this is one of the issues is like, that's where a lot of this fall off has come from is those type of guys. So the Lakers are going to need to figure some stuff out. And the other thing is if it's not working to your satisfaction, you're going to have to figure out ways to address that, whether that's, I guess creating more contact, or I guess it's this complaining about it publicly, or maybe adjusting your game plan and trying to find different ways. But I don't know that like just expecting this thing that you're not in control of to go your way is the best approach for the Lakers going forward. All right. Finally, Los Angeles Clippers revealed on Monday a brand new branding, the new logo, which people were a little confused by, but I really liked. It's got a compass kind of looking thing on it. You can see the photos of it online.
Nautical theme, right?
It's a nautical theme, right? Because the Clipper is a ship. It looks like a compass.
I'm surprised. Sorry to kind of get off. I'm surprised a lot of people don't know that that's what they mean. Like, what did they think they were talking about as the Clipper? Like, they didn't know it's a Clipper ship. That they think it was like hair clippers. Like, what? Did people not understand this until the logo came out today? That's like, oh, Clippers, that's a ship? What does that mean? I know this is just more indicative of the poor educational system in the United States, but yes, they were the San Diego Clippers at one point, a city known for their great dock, and they had a Clipper ship there, etc. That's why they were named the San Diego Clippers. But that's just me being an NBA historian. Sorry for bringing it up.
Not a lot of boating enthusiasts, it turns out.
The Euler circles don't mesh well with the boating enthusiasts.
No, not a lot of boating enthusiasts, I think, out there in the casual sports fans. Maybe if they were called the Los Angeles Schooners, people would get it better. But I do like it. The logo is really cool because actually it's just they flip the ship to face forward, and so the sails are at the top. And once you explain that to people, they're like, oh, I get that it's not immediately available. But I do think, one, the font, the color scheme, the blues and red jerseys look absolutely phenomenal. I like that they're going away from the very basic circle with the LAC in it. I like moving away from that. This design was really great. And it's in tandem. People are talking about it today, but it's not just the jerseys. They're moving into their own building next year. Like the Los Angeles Clippers, for the first time in their history, are going to have an identity that is not tied to the Lakers. You talk about history, David. Do you know who is responsible for the Los Angeles Clippers coming to LA from San Diego?
No, I don't actually.
Jerry Buss. He brought in a friend of his. You may have heard of him, Donald Sterling.
Yeah, that's right.
Fellow real estate
mogul. Yeah, that's right.
Those two were buddies, and he brought his friend in and got him to sign on because he was like, hey, I'll give you the building, knowing that there'd be another team in the building to add revenue for the building, as well as the ability to always be not the Lakers. So fun bit of history there. But did you like the branding? Do you like the new look for the Clippers?
It's okay. Yeah, it doesn't move me. Like, really, I don't know. Like, I don't. If you're going to do a rebrand, to me, I feel like a much bigger just departure from where you were is necessary. I think it's a fine tuning, but it just doesn't seem as severe enough for me to be like, oh wow, this is really cool, or not enthused about it at all. It's fine. It's fine,
I like that it's not cartoonish. I like that it looks really sleek. I like that it's going to look really good with the new building built around those concepts. I'm excited.
The All-Star team too, right? And in 2 years, I think they're hosting the All-Star game in their new arena as well. So exciting news.
That'll be exciting. Yeah, by the way, the Athletic reported today the next 3 are going to be on either the West Coast or in Phoenix. So warmer weather, nicer places for the players. They won't have to go to nasty places anymore. Good for them. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On NBA. Make sure to check us all out all throughout the week. Appreciate you guys being with us. You can catch David on Locked On Heat. I'm on Locked On Nuggets. We'll see you guys again next time on Locked On NBA.